I am an audio geek. I'm an audio nerd. I love this stuff, and I'm so excited to speak with JP Beaudoin of, well, both Headspace Studio as well as Felix and Paul Studios. How's it going?
Great, Jason. How are you?
I'm doing awesome. Here. It is really great to have you here. I love it when I get the chance to talk with someone who is entrenched in the audio production world as you are.
Well, it's exciting to hear that because audio doesn't get much attention, right, these days?
It's true. It always kind of seems to be, shuffled into the corner, not nearly as important, yet audio influences what you see. If it's not good audio, it actually looks, the visuals look worse.
Correct, and everybody seems to agree that audio is 50% of, either a film or a VR experience, but still it gets 5% of the attention. But you know, that's what it is. You don't get into audio to get to be out there,
to get recognized, to get famous, all that kind of stuff. So, okay, so to give people a little bit of a background on both Headspace, your work at Headspace Studio, and then of course Felix and Paul Studios. This is about immersive audio, and specifically immersive audio in the context of virtual reality applications. Tell us a little bit about kind of the work you're doing specifically with Headspace.
Sure. So, well, it all started with Felix and Paul, the individuals. Been a long time we've been exploring immersion, either in cinema, building 3D mixes as well, and 3D cinema. And then when Palmer Luckey did his first Kickstarter with what would become the DK1, the Oculus Rift DK1, we got into that, and Felix and Paul were actually able to reconstruct in full stereoscopy the full sphere and get that complete immersion in VR. And I had to find a way to match that high quality with audio. So we started exploring, and that's been going on for 3 years. Been partnering with Oculus for content. So all content being produced by Oculus for live action is done by Felix and Paul.
Excellent.
And at some point, I really interested in exploring the medium, so I think it's only fair to work with other directors as well. So that's why we partnered and founded Headspace to be able to work with other directors.
So it sounds like the work that you're doing with Headspace obviously targeted at this industry, at the immersive audio for VR, but you're not just keeping it for yourself, you're not just keeping it locked into Felix and Paul Studios. Anybody can be a partner. That totally opens up the potential for you guys.
Actually, I think that any company that's into VR right now has a duty to make sure this medium gets the attention it deserves, because it's not any day that you see a new medium happening. The last time it was cinema and VR. If people have tried it, at least very high quality cinematic VR, and that's one thing we can talk about later on. This is about cinematic VR, so it's film. We do a bit of CGI live action, but it's really a new medium. So you got to think about what that workflow means, but artistically as well. Does it need a new vocabulary? And since it's totally different, right? So there's R&D to be done, exploration on all fronts.
How, as we're talking here, VR, the concept of VR and kind of the overarching view of VR has been around for a very long time. This particular year seems to be a really crazy turning point for virtual reality, and just the thought of strapping a goggle to your face and being transported to another world. Have you seen that much, or as much rather, interest in the audio side from the immersive standpoint as people are paying attention to kind of the immersion in video?
I think as soon as people actually try an experience where audio is of extremely high quality, spatialized, and there's a lot of care and effort put into it, there's no turning back.
Yeah,
that's for sure. Because the important thing with VR is first of all, if you want to deliver, people always talk about presence, that sort of elusive magic thing that's called presence. It's kind of a black art right now. The way to get there, one of the ways, is to deliver very high quality immersion. And if you only deliver perfectly stereo stitch visuals, but your audio is stereo, and you talk to me and I turn around and your voice suddenly follows me, it doesn't work, right? Yeah. Things have to be where they should be in space. And that allows you to bring the person to on that threshold of suspension of disbelief and actually crossing that line, and then that becomes magic, right?
Right,
Then,
right.
then you're totally transported.
Yeah, man, I can't even imagine. Like, I'm a musician. I mix my own music. I play around with Pro Tools.
I started that way too.
And I feel pretty competent in that realm. But when you're talking about 360-degree audio that follows you everywhere, there's just so many components. I don't even understand where you start from kind of a production standpoint or process standpoint. How do you tackle this?
Technically, you mean? So there are two components. Obviously, you stated edge tracking, which is fundamental, right? At least for the spatialized audio part in that experience. But there's also the elevation component, and that's fundamentally different to anything that we've seen before in audio. You would get, surround, and if you get the high-end theater experience with Dolby Atmos, so that kind of thing, it's great, but it's nothing like in real life. When you walk towards me, I hear your footsteps down there, and I hear you talk at that elevation, and you need to be able to translate that into VR, or else you've got what I always say about our walking foot and walking mouths. If you've got that, you're pulled out of the experience. It doesn't work.
Right.
So you need to find a way to capture that information. And that's possible with a technology that, funny enough, has been around since the 70s called ambisonics.
Okay.
Now, ambisonics can be a very opaque audio format, but it's becoming more and more accessible. So there's a way to capture information with those kind of microphones, and then you import that audio, but you need to be able to have it in post-production and process it you would with normal
Right.
mono, stereo,
tools.
or exactly.
Yes.
So you need new tools, but obviously there's if you're doing cinematic VR, you want that high quality movie sound. So you want to hear those dialogues. You want to be able to add Foley sound design like you would do in any movie. So it's a combination of that spatial sphere of sound that you're able to capture, and then point source, like we still use lav mics. The hard thing is that you have to take those point sources and reposition them in space. So if you've got a character that's moving around the viewer, you have to trace all that movement, and so it's...
And go ahead and add in maybe more ambience depending on where they happen to be versus standing right up next to you, where the ambience is really
Absolutely.
pushed back and you hear them fully in front.
Correct.
Now, ambisonics, is that also what encapsulates the aspect of like the fact that our ears are on the side of our, the sides of our head, obviously, separated by all of this mass, so that sound doesn't necessarily hit our ears at equal times. It's a little filtered by the time sound coming this way goes here and comes around to the other
So
side
the
of the head.
magic word you're looking for,
Yes, I know I'm missing
is
the word.
binaural audio.
There we go.
You have it.
There we
And that's a very good question, and I think we need to disambiguate that term. So no, ambisonics has nothing to do with binaural audio. Obviously, you can apply binaural processing at rendering time.
Right.
So, as you stated, your head, the torso, the shape of your canine, and all these things influence on the way you perceive location, and so we apply those filters at rendering time. So if
Got it.
I'm in that position and I basically, since it's consumed over headphones, if I give you that stereo mix and at that precise moment you should be in front of me, so I will have if that was recorded with a lav mic, for instance, I will hear you exactly in that direction, and then I will apply HRTF filtering so you really get that binaural real life experience. And then of course it's okay if you're localized, but I need to put you in that space with that reverb quality and so forth.
So we're talking obviously a lot about kind of how this sound is treated when you're in the visor experience with headphones over the top of your ears, but there's also immersive audio in kind of at home, watching a movie in your cinema room application. How is processing and working with immersive audio for VR different from that environment?
It's very different, right? The main thing is that when you're either in a theater or home cinema, um, it's immersive, but it's an experience. You don't
Fixed.
get the real. It's fixed, and you don't get the real perspective that's just built for you. Where in
Yeah.
VR, it's a POV medium, and you get that premium positioning, localization experience, right? So
Right.
it's a very personal experience. Doesn't mean that the theater experience or home theater experience is not interesting, right? It's just something else, and now they're coming with Dolby Atmos for home, and I believe Auro 3D and those kind of immersive audio for home solutions now give you at least elevation. They got speakers on the top, so it's totally different. But what we're interested in is to be able to produce audio that is output independent, right? So if you're able to mix in a way that doesn't matter what kind of input, if it's either binaural headphone in the end, or if you need a 7.1 or 11.1 setup, if it's possible to carry all this information,
Scale it based on the
exactly,
application.
and that's happening. You know, those the next broadcast standards will bring that. So channel-based audio, object-based audio. That's another very interesting subject, and higher order ambisonics together. You can build that output, especially for the medium you're watching it in.
Fascinating. Okay, so we have a few more minutes, and I know that there are a lot of things that I'm sure we haven't touched on. Object, based audio is one of those. Tell me a little bit about that.
Object-based audio can be, I think the easiest way to understand it is if you need to deliver content at, let's say, a live broadcast, but you need to have 3 different languages, for instance. If you want English, Spanish, you could have the English object, or you can have the Spanish object, for instance. Now, that's a very easy concept to grasp, but you can also do, like when you mix a movie, you could have that object that's moving in space.
Yep.
As an audio object with metadata, and it gets repositioned in real time. That's another way to use it.
Man, this stuff it just gets more and more complicated and complex. It's crazy.
It does. And you're touching an important subject. This is why we need standards.
Absolutely.
This is why we need to democratize the platforms for streaming, for VR at least. I think that's one of the most important things, because if we don't have that, then you'll have to basically recreate your mix from scratch for every platform, which doesn't make sense, right? From a timing perspective, I mean, you can't take 3 months when it should take only 1 month,
right,
to mix a project, and cost, so it's not effective. So the industry has to work together and find common grounds.
Is that happening? I mean, is there anything that the industry by and large is leaning towards as a standard, or it's just still so early that it's kind of the Wild West at this point?
It's the Wild West,
yeah.
But everybody understands that. And if it's too complicated, it's going to be hard to produce very high-end content, because it's going to add on the production costs, and it's just going to be very complicated, and the consumer will be confused. And so everybody seems to understand that, but right now, of course, everyone's trying to push their technology, because everyone's convinced that they got the best technology, and which is normal. But we're going to get there. We're like a web design circa, I don't know, 1993, where right now it's web standards are more implemented. And
Right. I think final question here. I could talk about this for days, but we have to move on. But I think this is what I want to know. Really, is where this all leads. What is, in fact, actually beyond where it all leads? What is beyond immersive audio? Do we even understand what kind of the next frontier is in this technology space?
Well, nobody's ever asked me that.
Sorry.
Is there anything beyond immersive audio?
Because I feel like not very long ago, immersive audio was hard to comprehend, and now it's here, and it's about to become, I mean, in some ways mainstream to a certain degree.
I think it will have to follow the medium. Nobody knows where VR wants or is going towards what it's going to evolve. AR is going to be there as well, augmented reality. So I think we're going to look at there's going to be interesting questions like when you're in AR. So if we're in reality, but there is an added layer of virtual content, we're going to have to mix additional audio content with the real life audio content. That's going to be an interesting problem to tackle.
Sure.
But I think if you get to really well-made immersive audio, it's such a compelling experience. We still, have a lot to work to do to get there at an industry level. It's already a great goal to achieve.
Yeah, fascinating. I love it, and I can't wait to see your handiwork and well, more importantly, listen to your handiwork.
People should go on the Oculus store if they have either an Oculus Rift or an Oculus Samsung Gear VR headset. That's where you can get most of our content.
And so what kind of content are people going to find from you there when they go looking?
Recently, we just did an incredible piece with LeBron James called Striving for Greatness.
Yeah, I saw that on your site. Yeah.
That's a great piece. It's really fun to watch, and it has mass appeal. And we did another piece called Introduction to Virtual Reality, which was commissioned by Oculus and Samsung, which is bringing you in the middle of the Africa, with elephants. You're in a yurt in Mongolia. You're with the dinosaur, the Jurassic World experience we did. So I think it's pretty exciting.
Fantastic. So JP Beaudoin, co-founder of head of sound at Headspace Studio, also director of sound technology for Felix and Paul Studios. Can people follow you online? Do you have like a Twitter account that people can kind of keep up on what you're doing?
I think the best place is Facebook. I do have a Twitter account for Headspace, but Facebook. And if we have people that are listening right now that are really into audio, we created a group on Facebook called Spatial Audio in VR, and it's a very active community, so I invite them to join.
Excellent. Definitely check it out. JP, it's a pleasure talking with you today. Thank you so much for, just making the audio nerd in me very happy. I can't wait to hear this stuff for myself.